back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Today, I am joined by actor Frisco Cosme. Frisco, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well, thank you. Thank you for having me, Ken. This is a great, fun experience for me, so it's pretty good. I'm glad to be here.
Oh, man, I am so honored to have you. For those of you that don't know, Frisco has been a part of such titles as The Pastor, Naked Singularity, and Gotham. Don't know if you guys have ever heard of that, just to name a few. So, man, you've had quite an extensive filmography under your belt. You've done a lot. What's it been like to be a part of these films?
It's actually been a dream come true, to be honest with you. Since I was a little kid, I used to always say, I used to watch a lot of films, and I said, wow, I want to do that when I grow up, and if I ever have the opportunity to do that, I want to be the bad guy. I always want to be the bad guy of the things because, bad guys have the most fun on set,
Sure.
We sometimes come sequels or it's just the action is there, so, to be able to do it was such I'm still, when I go on set and see actors that I've watched on TV growing up, I'm still sort of like starstruck, but within myself, So I feel like, this is where I'm meant to be,
Well, and it's
So it's
funny
been
because the
great.
reason we're doing this, obviously, we got hooked up with each other because of Frankie G, who is one of the coolest guys I've ever met. And he also is more of a
That's
villain
my
type
guy, right?
guy. Yeah, and it's funny because you and him are both two of the nicest guys I've ever met. But I can totally see the two of you because of your acting chops as the badass bad guys. So,
Yeah,
you
let
have
me
worked,
let me
like I
tell you a
said,
quick story. Go ahead.
please.
No, I was
No,
gonna say,
I
let
want
me
to
tell
hear it.
you a quick story about how I met Frankie G. So,
Yeah.
I went to an audition, actually a casting call. There was a casting call for this film that's coming out, and they needed to they needed the bad guys, or they needed someone to play one of the lead guys' right hand man, so to speak. So, I said, I'm every time I submit to be bad guys, I normally get it. So when I submitted, they called me in. So when I walked in, the moment I was walking in, like before I even got to the table, the young lady that was sitting at the table was like, "Oh my God, this is Lucas's guy right here." And Lucas happened to be Frankie G's character. Now I didn't know it was Frankie G when I walked into the audition, right? To the casting. So, you know, um, I'm like, okay, cool. They're like, "Oh my God, you look like you would be his dude. You would be like part of his gang and stuff." So I was like, all right, so I'm with it.
Right.
Then here comes Frankie G, and I'm just like, that's the guy from Johnny Zero. That's the guy from Saw. What the, So I'm inside. I'm already going like, oh my God. On top of that, he's a Latin man. I
Mm-hmm.
don't see that much. You understand? In the
Right.
film industry, you don't really see leading guys or someone, like him. So, and he's a bad guy, and he's just a badass, on screen. He's
Mm-hmm.
just a badass. So I said, oh my God. So when we started talking on set, he was so cool, man. He was so cool. And he just became someone that, like a mentor of mine, I got to work with his wife in a play, which was pretty awesome. She's just as badass as he is on screen, so she's a great actress. I love it, I loved it. So being able to be part of that and be having him where I can call like a friend, a mentor, someone that I
Yeah.
can look up to is really great. To be able to work with him was even better. So, it all just worked out, man. It was just great.
And he's a guy that, after we did our episode, like he'll still reach out to me. I'll still reach out to him and we'll just communicate. He's just a great guy, and much like you, he's very
That's
proud of his
Frankie,
Latin
yeah.
culture. And it's really nice to, the pride that man has, and not in a bad way, not in a sinful way, but
No,
just the pride that he has and the proudness he has of himself and his culture it's awesome.
let me just tell you the type of guy that he is, right? So when he's on set, of course, he's Frankie G, so he's got the people, the first team following him, making sure he's got everything, usually when when it's time to eat, they separate, extras from leading and what have you. Frankie always comes to the background people and eats lunch with them. he always just talks to them. He's just like, that's just who he is. His heart is like beyond, it's like platinum, it's like titanium. You know, it's like his interest in people, and he just, you know, he just talks. He's a mentor without him even realizing. So he's just phenomenal. That's just who he is. He, you know, they'll tell him, oh well, they'll tell the extras, oh, you know, you can't talk, you know, try not to talk to them. Frankie hears that, he's like, what? You're crazy. And he'll sit with the extras, and he'll sit with the
Yeah.
background people, because to him, there's no you're lesser than. You know,
Yeah.
we're equal. So he's
Mhm.
just phenomenal, man.
And it's funny you say that, because I want to tell a little story real quick before we get rolling. Me and him did the episode of my first horror movie together, and my son is a huge Saw fan, and I was explaining that to Frankie. And at the end of the episode, after we were done recording, my son's birthday was the day before, and I was talking to Frankie, and he seen the big 3 balloon up in the sky, and he said, "Oh, who just turned 3?" I said, "Well, it's my son. He just turned 13 yesterday. He's a big Saw fan." So Frankie recorded a message for my son and sent it to me, a video message, just so I could show my son that Frankie wished him a happy birthday. That's the type of character that Frankie G has, man. And that's the type of man he is. I didn't ask him to do it. He was just like, dude, let me do this for your son because he's such a fan. And so Frankie not only won me over for life, but my son, like, it blew his mind. The guy from Saw 2 was wishing him a happy birthday. You know, it was just the coolest experience in his life.
It's, I'm sure. Like I would know what I do if I got a message from Janet Jackson, a happy birthday. You know what I'm saying? Like that would be like the ultimate. So I could just imagine how he feels. So pretty cool.
Yeah, it was great, man. So Frankie, if you're watching, we love you. Please don't ever change. Stay who you are, because you are the man. Well, now the reason we're here today, my friend, is we are here to talk about what got you started in the horror movie. And you, much like me, are a big horror movie fan. This is something we've talked about. Horror is right up your alley. So let's talk about your first horror movie, man. And your first horror movie was
The Exorcist, hands down. Like, The Exorcist was my first horror movie, and till this day, it's just my number one. It's my number one. No matter what movies come out, no matter how gruesome, Exorcist will always hold number one spot.
Mm-hmm. And it's one of those movies that you have a different experience watching it as a child versus watching it as an adult. 2 completely different feelings come over you. Do you remember how old you were the first time you had watched it?
I was about between 5 and 6. I was pretty young. Now, it's funny how I even saw the movie, because I have 4 older sisters, right? And so my oldest sister actually watching it, but she was, I think she was babysitting me, but I remember that she put the blanket over my face, you know, and it was one of those thin blankets that were like, that looked like they were knitted almost, you know, like they were crocheted. And so what I did was that I stuck my little finger and I broke a bigger hole so that I can see the movie through the blanket. And that's how I seen the entire movie. Now, after a while, she knew I was watching because I would jump in the scary parts. I would jump. So, you know, at first she thought it was because of the noise, but then she happened to kind of look down and saw my little eyeball like through the thing, and she, you know, but at that point it was like almost finished. So
yeah, it's a wrap at that point.
Yeah, told me not to watch it, but it was pretty traumatic for me, to be honest with you, Ken. I was traumatized.
And it's funny because I've told the story before, and I won't go into too much detail, but you know, I grew up in a video store, and so I had pretty much free reign over what movies I could watch. But The Exorcist is the only movie that we started watching, and my mother shut off. She was like, "Nope, we're not doing it. Too scary, too much." So it always held a stigma for me with that. And this is one of those movies where there are so many scenes that are absolutely terrifying and absolutely heartbreaking and absolutely, you know, gut wrenching. But which scene was it, Frisco, that you think affected you the most?
Okay, so there were 2 particular ones that I can actually remember that off the top of my head. I think the first, okay, so the first one where I was completely shocked was when she did the 360 with her head, when she turned
Mhm.
the 180 with her head, and she turned her head around, because that came before. I mean, my God, Ken, it was pretty gruesome. That scene in particular, in a whole, was crazy. But when her
Yeah.
head turned around in particular, that to me was like, oh my God, like that was like, I was scared. I was really, that was the most traumatic. However, later on, when Father Karras meets the devil himself, when she's tied in the bed, um, when Reagan spoke for the first time, that she said, "I'm the devil." That whole
Yeah.
scene, that to me, that to me was a bit more impactful, just mentally, than the one with the 180 with the head. Um, uh, because of the sounding of the voice, the way her face looked, she had the tube coming out, so it almost looked. It was so that scene, like that, was the most shocking, like to my like core. But then the 180 came first because that scene came first. But
Right.
after I saw
Well,
the
I mean,
scene, that took over. That
when
became
you watch this little girl say, "I'm the devil," like little girls are supposed to be these, the sweet, innocent, beautiful young things. And this girl is the epitome of evil now. Pazuzu has taken her, which makes it even scarier because you have the most beautiful outside with literally the most evil inside. And that's something to me that makes this movie so amazing. And at the time, obviously, people were running out of theater screaming and crying. If I could go back in time and visit one movie in the theater, this would be it for sure.
yeah, absolutely. Like I didn't see it in the theater, but I'm sure that if even like, and actually when they did the director's cut where they added some scenes that they actually took out of the movie, when she comes crawling backwards down the stairs and stuff like that, um, I saw that in the movie, and that to
Yeah.
me was like the first time I saw it, because it was actually like big screen. It was like, and I was older, but yeah, I was traumatized for a little while. I was scared,
Mhm.
and that made me, being 5 and 6 years old. You know, when I started seeing young girls in the street and in school, I would then wonder, does that happen to them at nighttime? And then I
Right.
just start going through these things in my head, and then I was like, it became scary. It almost became like part of my young worries, because
Yeah.
it was traumatic. It did something to the psyche, it did. And now I don't know if that triggered my love for horror,
Mhm.
if that makes sense, because after that I wanted, after a couple of years, I was like, okay, now I want to start seeing more, and I want to start
Yeah.
seeing how much I can take. And so the love for horror, I think, just clicked at that time.
And what a
I think
perfect way to
that's
start, because and something you brought up that I've talked about before, as young boys, when we were watching this,
yeah,
I wasn't quite that young, but I was a young boy myself. We don't understand what happens in the life of girls. Like we have sisters and shit, but we don't know the extent.
correct,
Like I didn't understand what the crucifix scene meant. I thought she was just stabbing herself. As a young boy who was innocent to the world,
right.
there's
To
a lot
me,
of this
that was
movie that didn't click.
absolutely, that was what I meant earlier when we were talking about that. They said that there
Mhm.
was a lot going on. I forget we're in the internet, so I can just talk. But it's like, that whole stabbing scene was crazy. Like, and it wasn't, I think, until later, a couple of years later, that when I started seeing it, that I said to my when I started really listening to the dialogue, and once she said lick me and all of that, then I clicked. I was like, oh my God. So it became something else to me. So it
Right?
just, like, these just kept on mounting. It was pretty, that movie for quite some time did something,
Right. And I've said it before.
it did.
The Exorcist is not my favorite horror movie, but I think that The Exorcist is the scariest movie that's ever been made. And
Yeah,
watching it, like I said, as a child, as compared to as an adult, I watched this movie as a child and I'm like, burn the house down, kill that demon, get out of there. But then I watch it as an
right.
adult and a father of 2 young ladies, there's nothing, what if that was my daughter? Well, I would do whatever I could to help her. And I think one of the saddest scenes in the whole movie is when she's there and "help me" is getting written across her stomach, like she's writing it on her own stomach. Because then that the innocence, the innocence is still in there. That little girl is still in there. So there's got to be a way that we can save her.
Yeah, I'm telling you that movie was, and the reason, and it's my number one horror, and it's the first movie I've ever seen that was horror, because at 5 years old, that's horror. That's horrific. That's like, and then start wondering, will that happen to me, or will that happen to my sisters, and especially coming from a household of women, I'm like thinking, oh my God, now I'm in a household where they can possibly be demons. Here we go, like where the kid's brain goes, you know what I'm saying? So it's pretty was pretty traumatic, Ken, I'll tell you, man. But I it's funny because we were having this, and this whole entire week they were playing The Exorcist on cable, and I just kept on watching it. Every time I clicked and it was giving it, I left it there, because it's almost like a magnet to me, because it's the first horror. So, like I have number one other genres. Like I have a number one psychological thriller. I have, those, but this to me, hands down, I mean, we're not really talking about gory scary. We're not talking about blood bath. We're talking about life scary. And I think it's because, I mean, till this day, anybody can get possessed. You know what I'm saying? So it's almost like a real life thing. It's almost like The Exorcist is actually, it is a true story. However, it can still happen till this day. So that's what makes it even more scary till this day.
How do you defeat the devil? You know what I mean? Like, how do you defeat the devil? Like, that's the thing that's always gotten me. And like, one scene that I don't think gets talked about enough, because for me personally, I love The Exorcist, but The Exorcist 3 is my favorite one of the franchise. And when you see Damien in the first one go out the window,
started.
Yeah, and you see him falling down the stairs, and then that gets picked up right in The
So
Exorcist.
we now see it from Father Karras' eyes. From like what happened to him during that whole time. Like after he fell, what transpired. So that to me was hands down the best. Yeah. Now, I mean, besides the first one, like 2 was okay. I like the fact that she went back to confront the demon and all of that. But yeah, going from the first one to going to 3 kind of made that connection. That was like, because I always wondered, even growing up, whatever happened, so what happened to him after he fell and was on the ground? What happened? Like they didn't show whether he went to the hospital, whether he died, so when 3 came out, that was pretty I couldn't, I was like, I was psyched. Really psyched.
And I still think 3 has the best jump scare of all time with the scissors. When he, oh man,
the lady behind the, come on, that was like, oh man, yeah. There's let me tell you, that little trilogy thing was pretty cool. I love it.
So we talked about which scene affected you the most, Frisco, but I want to go a little different here. And I know it's really hard to pick a favorite scene from The Exorcist because there's a lot of dark in this movie. But what would you say as an adult your favorite scene from The Exorcist is?
Okay, so my favorite scene, I would have to say, oh my God, it's so hard to pick, Ken. Like, so let me see. As an adult, which one would be my favorite scene? I think my favorite scene would probably have to be when he met her, when he met the devil for the first time. The most scariest part for me would probably be my favorite. Reason for that, and it goes a little deeper now. The reason I think that would be that's my favorite scene as an adult is because now as an adult I can see good and evil for what it is, and how they just don't mix. You understand? So The reason why I think that would be my favorite scene is because when he introduces himself, when he asks him who am I speaking with, and he says, I'm the devil, and he goes, I'm Father Cares. You know, they start having this dialogue where it's almost like good versus evil, and it's almost like they're almost like playing cat and mouse with their,
Yeah.
with the spirit. It's a cat and mouse game with their dialogue, because she opens the drawer. He says, "Do it again." She says, "In time." He says, "Do it again," and he says, "In time." And so almost like, don't push it, and it's
Yeah.
almost like this. They're kind of battling back and forth. So just spiritually, that would be it. I mean, altogether, that would be my favorite scene, because it's this good versus evil. Who's going to win this little tug of war, And so
Hmm.
that I would have to say that in itself right there would be my favorite scene. The
Right
scariest
before that
and my
too. Right before that, one of the most iconic scenes in the movie. I mean, even it's the poster, it's the T-shirts when he shows up at the door, and the cab drops him off, and he gets
yes,
out, and the light shining
the
down on him, and the
light.
fog is
Yep.
there. Like that to me is just like the epitome of
I
cinematography. That's when you know you've done
Yeah, they
something right.
couldn't have chosen a better picture for that to
Right.
be the cover, because
Yeah,
that, I mean, just looking at that itself, it's almost like, oh my God, I want to see the movie, but I don't know if I want to. It
right.
gives you that, it's that omnious feeling, that
Hmm.
real, that
If pictures have suspense, that is one of the most suspenseful pictures, because looking at that picture, you can't tell anything about the movie, but you can tell everything about the movie when you look at that picture. Like
yep,
you
yep.
feel it when you look at that picture.
Yes, it's great, man. I think it's that's one of, I mean, you got the gories, you got the zombie movies, which are not,
Mm-hmm.
there are some zombie movies that I tell you are crazy and has me jumping, and so we got those as well. But for me, I mean, I can't emphasize it enough. Like, Exorcist is it. Like, 28 weeks later was crazy. 28 days later was crazy.
Mm-hmm.
You got Train to Busan, that was absolutely out of this world. I can't wait to see the second one, Peninsula,
I
that's
know.
coming out. Um, I mean, so we got these movies that are pretty crazy, because I mean, you got World War Z also, that
Yep.
was crazy. So it's not like back in the day. These zombies have become fast as hell. So if they came after me, man, running the way they run in like 8 weeks later, World War Z, Train to Busan, I don't know what would happen, Ken, because I'm used to, like, back in the 70s, them shits being all slow and shit.
Right.
But now they grab onto the wall type thing,
It's funny to me because people are like, "Oh, I wish a zombie apocalypse would happen." I'm like, dude, I want to move out when there's a
No.
spider in my house. Like, I can't imagine if there was.
You know what I'm
zombies.
saying? Like, come on, come on. And I'm one. It's so funny because I'm one who, I like scaring people. I like popping
Yeah.
out of things. Ah. But when it's done to me, I just get like, I'm like, why do you do that? So they're
Yeah.
like, oh, you can't take it, right? I can't, because like, movies. Even when movies scare me, I'm like, oh, I get upset. You know what I'm saying? I'm like,
Right.
what? But
Dude, we're the same
I don't
person,
know.
man. 'Cause I'm the same way. I jump out of my wife all the time, but she does it to me. I'm like, Ashley, what do you do? I hate that. You know I hate it. She's like, I don't give a fuck.
Right, right, right.
So, man, we
I,
always
I,
end
I
this
was,
with the
I
same question. We're gonna go back to The Exorcist, and we're gonna rank it
Yeah,
on a
yeah.
skull count. 0 being the worst and 5 being the best. Now, Frisco, we're not being critics here. We're not ranking it on production, acting, cinematography. We're ranking this movie strictly on what it means to you and how much it affected you. So I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but I always got to ask the question. 0 skulls being the worst, 5 being the best. What would your ranking of The Exorcist be?
Oh my God, it would be a 5, and then I'll fall asleep, wake up again, a 5 again. It's straight up a number 5. Yeah, hands down, for sure.
And man, I can respect it and I appreciate it so much because this movie really changed the landscape of horror.
It
Look at all
really
the
did.
Exorcist movies that are still coming out to this day with the exorcism of Emily Rose and the exorcist of the Saginaw House. You know, you still have these movies that are coming out today, and they wouldn't be happening without this one. So I didn't say this at the top of the program, and I usually do, but everybody, I do have Frisco's social media links down here in the description. So make sure you're giving him a follow on social media so you can stay up to date with all the things that he's working on in the future. And you don't have to wait for me to tell you this stuff. So Frisco, please let me know of anything you do have coming up so I can update everybody. Don't go anywhere though, my friend. Yeah, go ahead.
No, as of right now, you know, just working on some independent stuff. So really great stuff, you know, working with a few new actors and upcoming directors, which is pretty great because we all, you know, great talent collaborates and you create some magic. So, but yeah, follow me, and you'll be sure to know on real time as well, because I'm a social media freak. I like to post everything on real time. So subscribe, follow,
click the links down here in the description, and you can follow him right away. Don't go anywhere, my friend. I got a couple more questions for you. Everybody else, thank you for watching. Keep talking horror. You are, and we'll see you guys soon.